The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hello, and welcome to the People's View. We are now looking at a number of different things in the legislature, and today we have Senator Kevin Avard, who can tell us what's happening in the Senate up there and what's going to come out.
Well, there's a lot of things happening right now. Obviously, it's budget time and it's crunch time, and there are a couple of weeks to go. And we're almost up to HHS right now, and that's half the budget right in itself. We were in caucus today. Today's what, the 19th? And I was just reaching over to Senator Daniels, who's the chair of finance, and he says, yeah, the HHS is Health and Human Services is about 50% of the budget. Really caught me back because that seems like that's a lot. You know,
Well, are they been adding stuff? I know mental health has been.
Oh, mental health is definitely an issue these days. Absolutely, and there's a lot of bills that are going forward, a lot of negotiation, a lot of amendments, a lot of work that's being done. I think one of the things that really is difficult is because of these omnibus bills that we've had. It's hard to get your bearing because there's so many factors that. It's hard to. They
put too many things together.
They put too many things.
Is that on purpose or?
No. It was actually to help things get processed better. It was happening last session. Now they've gotten better at it. Yeah. But it still is. It's very hard to navigate.
Yeah.
And so what they're doing is they're taking things out, they're putting things in, putting them in HB2, the Senate finance, and there's a lot of negotiation that is going on. So a lot of the towns are asking, so what's going on? And it's really difficult to say in concrete because negotiations are going on. As whether it's with the governor's office, whether it's with the House, whether it's with our colleagues on the other side of the aisle, there's a lot of things going on, and there is work going on. But it's difficult to put a number on a whole host of things. So yeah, there's a lot of things going on. We're moving forward with a lot of things. Just in energy alone, we've just finished all our bills this week. Good. We exected them yesterday. Was it yesterday?
Well, I know Monday, that's one of your favorite ones to talk about. So
yeah, well, I'm the chair.
Good part?
I'm the chair of energy, and we've done some really good things for Nashua.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Number one was 315, House Bill 315 and Senate Bill 109. House Bill 315 basically helps consumers if they want to aggregate with other consumers and get out of their default system. They can join other groups and get lower energy rates if they want to get in part of another group. And so that was put forward by the House. That passed, and I believe we're going to have a signature on that. And we passed 109, which is my bill, and it allows for the local municipalities to generate their own
energy,
clean energy. And here in Nashua, we have two dams. Right. One is being rebuilt or upgraded, and hopefully we can get some federal money for that based upon 109. And also it'll allow Nashua to generate up to 5 megawatts. So the municipalities will be able to lower their energy costs by using these dams. Sure. And we've worked on this for, well, my last term, and a little bit before that we were working on it, negotiating. It got vetoed, and then of course I didn't get reelected, so now we're reelected. We reintroduced it.
So what was the percent increase that you got out of it?
We passed it.
Yeah.
We passed it, and we passed it so that it can generate up to local municipalities.
You said up to 5, but what was it before?
1.
1. Okay, so that's quite.
It's substantial.
Jump. Yeah.
Yeah, and so with I think the Mine Falls Dam can actually generate up to 3 megawatts. So the schools, all the lights and streets and stuff that can be generated locally instead of having to tax the transmission lines.
So that allows them to continue with the solar energy.
Yeah, solar and hydro. So
Right.
the renewable energies, which is it's just another way to lower
Right.
our load or our
Sure.
dependency on those transmissions. That's a big part of the bill.
Uh-huh.
Before there was like a cost shifting, and so that's why the governor didn't want it. And but he's all for it. We moved some bills on wind, and Senator Waters worked really hard on that. So the only hang up is with procurements, as far as setting up procurements, but it's another source of energy.
Yeah.
And we passed, what was it, 309? I forgot what 309 does. That was Harrington's bill, but we added the hydrogen plant.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so up north, one of the northern towns, they have a plant that they're going to turn water
Into just hydrogen gas. Yeah, and I know that's the new concept that people are.
and they're swearing by it. They say it's going to be really cheap energy. So again, it's like all of the above, and if we could see some progress with that, that's another source of energy, because the nuclear plant's not going to be up forever. So you got to plan out 15, 20 years up in advance. Maybe it'll get another 40 years. Who knows? But so that's some of the energy bills that are coming forward, and Nashua's really going to benefit from that. So we're just waiting on the House to say yes, yes, yes. And of course, the governor. We work closely with the governor's office as well.
Yeah.
You've probably seen in the papers. We put in a bill because former Alderman Dan Moriarty and Fred T. Boone, they were really instrumental of bringing the lawsuit to the Supreme Court.
This was on
the spending cap. Nashua has a spending cap. Franklin has a tax cap. Rochester, Dover, I think they have tax caps. Mm-hmm. Different beast, but it still performs.
It's basically the same. It's
similar.
It's a monitor to something that you have to, if you want to change, you have to get the vast majority.
Correct, or a supermajority. Excuse me. Well, we testified on the bill and the history of it. 1993, I believe the current mayor was around at that time, and the people said, enough of the spending. We're sick of it. And so by referendum, that's democracy, ladies and gentlemen, referendums. If you have a referendum in your local municipalities and the people vote in favor of one way or another, that is pure democracy. And by referendum, Nashua voted for a spending cap, primarily because the current mayor just loves to spend your money. And I think people have had it.
Well, I think one of the things, too, at the time is his moving different things in and out of the budget, which was a gimmick more than anything else.
And we could talk about the landfills. I think that's one of the issues that somebody else brought up, but we can talk about that after. Whether you love them or not, it is not the issue. The fact is that there is a spending that is going on, and of course the aldermen are just yes people. They just, yeah, whatever you want, Mr. Mayor. And after a while, and he believes his own press, because apparently the press loves him. The bottom line, though, here with the spending cap, we put in a bill because as Fred and Dan, Alderman Moriarty, brought it to the Supreme Court had an issue with some of the wording, exceptions, and there was another word for it, but they didn't mean the same thing, and so it couldn't be enforced. So the people voted on it. They wanted a spending cap, saying, look, this is where it ends. This is where you have to, this is where we draw the line, okay? Spend up to that point, but after that, there's got to be some accountability here. And the Supreme Court said, well, the way it's worded, it doesn't work. And I think that's primarily because in 2011, Senator Bradley put in a bill to fix it, to make sure that it was stronger, but they didn't foresee the Supreme Court having an issue with the two words.
Right.
So we submitted a new bill to.
They're trying to put a format out that's going to work
based on the formula that the Supreme Court said. This is what
you needed to do.
We need to do, and this is the language. That way we can enforce it. And when I introduced it into the Senate, we had a lot of support. And of course, I don't think they thought they were going to get that far. So it seems as though the Democratic machine brought out a lot of protests, and we still passed it in the House. we passed it in the Senate, and it passed in the House committee just this week, 10-9. So there was enough support to get it past the committee. But some of the questions, one of the state reps just said, what's the difference between 2/3 and a supermajority? And I'm thinking, why does it matter?
Yeah.
The people want this. And as I'm talking about how the democracy works here locally, the representative is just shaking their heads and she's angry. And it's like, why are you so angry? This is what the people want.
Yeah.
How disrespectful. This is what the people want. They want accountability when it comes to your local municipality spending or buying things or taking or shifting the budget around. And this is important for the people of Nashua. I went to buy loom the other day, and I got an earful. I got an earful from the person because he said the mayor is out of control, and the aldermen are out of control. And he was talking about the Arts Center, and I said, listen, I support the arts. I think it's a great idea. But he said, did you know that in Groton, they're building a $100 million art center to compete with the local? He was just giving me an earful. And the problem when the press loves you, you don't get to hear the bad news.
Right.
And I think the mayor needs to really start listening to the other side instead of listening to the echo chamber. So anyway, that was one of the bills.
Okay, Senator, what is the one bill that you wanted to talk about?
HB 177. It's a tough one. It's one of those bills where you shake your head and you say, there's no way of getting out of this, no way of answering it properly without feeling bad. HB 177 is a bill that passed the House, which has to do with the landfills. And what they wanted to do is, by the state coming in and saying, if you own property within 2 miles of a state park, you can't sell it for any development for landfill.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, it's a backdoor, grab of your property, at least one area where
limit to what you can do with your property.
Yeah, but it's like an eminent domain type of thing. It doesn't protect conservation areas. It doesn't protect the national forest. It doesn't protect anything other than one particular area in which put in an emergency order because they don't want a landfill in their town. And I get it. I understand. Nobody wants a landfill, especially up in the mountain areas and stuff like that. And you worry about the leakage and things of that nature. But the problem is you can't own a home in New Hampshire and not have trash at some point. You got to put it somewhere. And we have Bethlehem and Berlin. They're the two landfills up north, and they're pretty much at the end of their life cycle.
Oh, really?
Right, in a couple of years from now. I say a couple of years, 2025 and 26. So a lot of the upper municipalities dump in those places. And Sunapee's one. So with this bill, Sunapee couldn't have a landfill. A whole host of places can't. And they would have to ship their refuse out of state or to Rochester. So that bumps up their fees from $80,000 a year to $150,000 to $160,000 for regular trash. And then, of course, the recyclables. We ship all our recyclables to Billerica. So what's happening is, because it's getting too expensive for these municipalities to ship to Mass, they're burying it. So it's reducing the lifespan of our landfills.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's a problem. So nobody wants to say, no, this bill is bad, put a dump up there. But at the same time, you still have the problem with, what are you going to do with the trash? Another thing that came to light is the fact that people from Mass, they can put up to 49% of their dump in our landfills. Yeah. So we're taking their refuse. We don't put it down there. We only send our recyclables down there, and we can't stop them, and we can't build them for it because of the Constitution. It doesn't allow for us to refuse it. I don't know how they got out of it, but so it's an issue that doesn't make you feel good. The only good part about it is if we can kill HB 177. Is it will allow a particular developer to come in and put in it's called a MRF, it has to do with recycling plant. $100 million recycling plant in southern New Hampshire. Now, that could be in Manchester or it could be in Nashua. But instead of burying it or shipping it out of state, and those costs will go up higher and higher, we'll be able to recycle here in New Hampshire and reuse it.
Well, that's something Nashua's going to have to worry about because they don't have much time on the area.
Tracy and I went to the dump the other day, and we just, what used to be a hole.
It's a mountain.
It's a mountain. It's a nice green. It's like you can put a T on that.
Yeah, they should be collecting the methane too. That's generated.
Well,
from
there's
that.
A little exactly. But
because many years ago, Lowell had a real big problem. It was starting to cause fires.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was leaking out underground and actually going into a building that was nearby.
Oh.
So
One spark could make a bad day.
That was right. Yeah. But
well, technology's happening. We've seen leaks in the past, and of course, their new DES, Department of Environmental Services, have more stricter standards. We upgraded those standards, and Research 146, Senator Waters has the bill on that. So it's a real issue. A lot of people don't think about their garbage. It goes away.
But you have to find a way of either recycling it or somehow disposing, disintegrating it.
Our neighbors, they recycle, but what they don't realize is it doesn't get recyced in New Hampshire. It gets shipped out. And so we were talking a little bit earlier about SB 52 and, taking, we won't add this to the budget so it doesn't look like we have a problem with spending. Well, the problem is the cost to ship our garbage out of state or our recyclables out of state is going up. The taxpayers need to know that.
Yeah, sure.
And some people are saying, well, we don't have a crisis, but we do.
Well, it takes so long to do something around here that you've got to start now and working on it because more and more towns are going to have that problem.
And we are. And I've gotten thousands, literally 2 miles worth of emails saying, please protect our forests. And I want to, and it's important to. But this isn't the way to do it. Because what's going to happen is they're going to be putting it into other landfills, and because we're not recycling, it's too expensive. They're just going to dump it into the ground, and it's going to cause more PFAS. It's going to cause more leakage. It's going to cause them to the life cycle of our facilities to disintegrate. I think turnkey is going to be around till 2035. That's out in the Rochester area. Sunapee's expenses are going to go up to $150,000 a year from $80,000 a year just to ship over to their recyclables into Mass. It's a phenomenal amount of money that just goes as soon as 2 landfills close. It takes 2 to 3 years to site for one.
Oh, yeah.
And if this bill goes through and it doesn't get killed, no commercial organization is going to want to try the application, because what this bill does, it sets a precedence. You want to build something, these groups can make sure that it doesn't happen through legislation, and they can bypass your local zoning ordinances. And so it's a tough bill. Nobody feels good about it either way it goes, but for the good of the state, we need to make sure that we have a plan and we have the ability to recycle. So we did a little PSA on that not too long ago, and I think if that happens, it'll be really good for New Hampshire, and it'll provide jobs.
Well, I think so, but we got to do it the right way.
Right, I agree.
Well, thank you very much, Senator. We'll do it again.
Sounds good to me.
In a couple more weeks, you think you'll be finished up there?
I'm hoping, and I think so. I think
because some people were saying it might go right to the end of June.
Oh.
Well, I'm sorry to mention it that way, but thank you for your time.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Hello again. We're continuing the show. Senator Avard had to leave, but we have past Alderman from Nashua, David Schoneman. Dave, how do you like what's happening in? We talked about the city's spending cap in the last session, and how do you like that the bill that's going through and is waiting for the Senate, the House of Representatives to vote on it.
Yes, I caught some of the taping you just did with Senator Avard there at the end. And I would say the spending cap, of course, is a very important issue to taxpayers here in Nashua. Taxpayers in Nashua overwhelmingly approved a referendum 20 some odd years ago to put in place a spending cap, because the best way to control how taxes are going to grow is by controlling spending. All of the money that the city of Nashua spends comes from taxpayers. There's not other pots. That's the only place. So if we want to control what our taxes are going to be and not, manipulate it from this year to that year to this year to that year, if we want to control our taxes, we have to control city spending. And that's why we put in place a spending cap. Other jurisdictions tried tax cap. Doesn't really work as well. I think a spending cap is the way to go. And I was on the board of Alderman when the spending cap issue really boiled over, I should say. And it's boiled over a number of times over the course of history. And there have been a lot of court battles. And this last one, a few years ago, was really silly in my mind. The cap was essentially thrown out by being declared unenforceable by the state Supreme Court because of the language. The initial law, state law, said that there has to be a provision for an override. And the Supreme Court focused on that word, override. And the language of the Nashua spending cap did not contain the word override. It contained a different word. Now I'm forgetting what it is. Exception or exemption. They could exempt something. So it wasn't the word override, it was the word exemption. And based on the choice of a simple word like that, the Supreme Court said that
it's not effective, huh?
The spending cap for Nashua didn't need to be or was not enforceable. Now, I will say this, that for all the 25 years that spending cap was in place, everyone knew there was an override. The mayor knew there was an override. He knew that he needed 10 votes to get it to override the spending cap. The Board of Aldermen knew there was an override. They knew about the 10 votes. Everybody knew about an override. And I think that there's a principle in law, or there should be, that if everyone's acting on knowledge of the existence of something, the underlying semantics of that thing not being 100% matching the law is not enough to throw the whole thing out. But that's what they did. Everybody operated on the basis that an override mechanism was in place. In fact, the spending cap several times in the past had been overridden. It had been overridden. So it was really silly and political gamesmanship in order for this mayor and this Board of Aldermen to spend more than they would otherwise have been allowed to. And I'm very encouraged by what Senator Avard said about the progress this bill is making through the state legislature in Concord. It went through the Senate, it passed the Senate, went over to the House, and it passed the House committee. Now it's got to be approved by the full House, and then it'll go to the governor for signature. But what that bill says is that it basically clarifies really something that shouldn't need to be done, but it does clarify and say, if a community has an override provision, even if it's not called an override, it's still a valid override, and our spending cap will be reinstated. Now, I think that the spenders in City Hall don't want that to happen, and my understanding is they're trying to fight it, of course, because they want to spend. The thing about a spending cap is that it forces a prioritization. And the city has never prioritized. In our homes and family budgets, we can go on vacation or we can buy the car. We can't do both. In the city, they want to go on vacation and buy the car. And that's fine because all they do is raise more taxes.
That's right. And they have that freedom. And just because the record behind them doesn't mean the record in front of them is going to be the same. And right now, there are a lot of things on their plate. They're building an arts center. They're supposedly going to build another school as they tear down Elm Street, which I think is a building that still can be used, especially the auditorium, which is still functional. And they want to do things along the river. They want to upgrade 2 middle schools. And there are a couple other things I can't think of right now, but there is a mess of things they want to spend money
There's a
on.
lot of spending. And the argument that was made when I was on the board is that, well, money's cheap. It's only costing us 2.5% or whatever. So let's say it's a $100 million project. And they say, well, it's only going to cost us 2.5%. That's $2.5 million. It's all going to cost you. No, it's going to cost you $100 million plus the interest.
Right.
It's not like it's somehow we're going to get all this stuff for only $2.5 million. No, we're spending all of this money. And people need to understand that. And where is that $100 million plus the interest coming from? Coming from the taxpayers. And I think, spending on the buildings, that's wonderful, but we have to get better education in the buildings we have before we say we need to have better buildings. Because every time we've improved our buildings, we haven't raised the level of education. And that's a significant issue. Why are we spending all this money on these buildings if the intended purpose is not met, which I think should only be we're going to improve education.
Right.
We have good school buildings. We don't have good schools. And I'll say that. I mean, I was on the board of aldermen. I know we're not going to send our son to these public schools. We're going to private school them or we're going to homeschool them because we want a good education for them. And I think a lot of folks felt the same way during COVID. They took their kids out.
That's obvious right now with all the action that's going on. People are grouping together and running for the Board of Education.
I think
the Board of Education hasn't really been a board. They don't even know what's being taught. They're not getting communication from this. And right now I understand they have 2 candidates for the new superintendent, one from Texas and one who is the acting superintendent right now. Guess who probably will be chosen?
Who?
But and he isn't doing anything because he isn't answering a basic question of the board. Are we using anything on critical race theory, which is a very hot topic right now?
It is, and he's not answering the question. That's what I understand. Well, I think that we can't necessarily assume, but if someone doesn't answer the question, the likelihood is they're thinking that if they answer this question, you're not going to like the answer.
Right.
And the only answer that I think we're not going to like is if he says, yes, we're teaching it.
Yeah.
So I think when someone dodges a question like that, are we teaching critical race theory? My guess, and it's a guess, my opinion, is that yes, we are, but he doesn't want to say that because he's afraid of the repercussions.
Right.
If he were to say no, we're not, if that was a true statement, there wouldn't be repercussions, I don't think, because I don't think critical race theory is really popular with too many other people besides some school districts and maybe teachers' unions or something. But I think the unpopular answer would be yes. And the reason he's not giving an answer is because his answer, in my opinion, is the unpopular answer.
I hope the local interviews that are supposedly going to take place this week has an answer to that.
Well, I would hope so. Transparency is an important part of government, and I think it's what every voter wants, and that should demand that. And if we have the school board not able to find out from a superintendent if they're teaching a particular curriculum, I think that's just wrong. So that needs to be forthcoming. And let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah, there's other questions too that need to be answered. This problem that we've had over the last 2 years, they were sort of debating whether they keep the previous superintendent or not. I think really hurt the whole education program.
Yeah.
It wasn't coming out, wasn't being discussed properly. And now fixing two middle schools where they probably want to upgrade, things that need to be upgraded, new educational techniques or science labs or even video programming or whatever should be incorporated in some of those. I know our charter schools are keeping up. We have 2.
They're doing a great job.
2 charter schools here in Nashua got national rating.
Yes, they're doing a great job. And it was something very interesting. I took a look at some of the data a number of years ago when I was on the alderman and on the board, and I don't have the figures here with me, but I want to just tell you the story that I learned. There was a time when I took a tour through one of the buildings as it was being renovated. And they were conducting they had multiple temporary classrooms set up in a gymnasium with kind of partition walls, no ceiling, just a high ceiling, and a lot of echoing and that kind of thing. But I looked at the kids as I was watching this, and the kids were happy. They were excited. They knew something special was happening. They were excited. And I made the comment, gee, look how great these kids are doing. They seem to be very happy here. And I was told, no, this is a terrible situation. We have to get them back into their classroom. This is way too distracting. This is a terrible thing. They're not learning anything. So I went back and I took a look at the performance of a number of schools that had been renovated. Looked at the performance before the renovation and after the renovation, of course, during the renovation. The renovation typically takes about a year or so. And there were 2 or 3 schools that I was able to get some data for. And you look at school performance. It's all public information, and you can graph this information. And I found that there were 3 of these schools, maybe 2 of them, they weren't any good performers. They may have been slightly going up over that period of time, or maybe slightly going down during that period of time, or maybe flat during that period of time. But during the year of construction, there was a little blip up.
Really?
And then after construction, it went right back down to the old trend. Now, that told me that somehow the experience of construction change, maybe the students for that moment believed that the school district or the teachers or the union or whoever cared what they were doing. Because I think that if you invest in a child and you let them know they're important, that we're doing something special for you, their performance is going to go up. But when it went back to the old status quo, that new blip, that increase in performance was not maintained. It went right back. So if it had been trending slowly up, it was a blip up and back down. And then that trend continued. If it was down, there was a blip up during that year and then back down again. And I think that's significant. I think that helps to explain why the charter schools do well. If you go tour a charter school, I remember walking through Academy for Science and Design one time, and it's like an old office manufacturing kind of building. There were a place where 2 corridors came together. 2 corridors just met. And the person gave me the tour said, well, here's our library. And you look around, there's a bookshelf there and a bookshelf there, and that's it. Much of their library is online. But I think a child who goes there knows that there's nothing fancy here. This is not about buildings, not about glorifying anybody. This is about teaching me and getting me prepared for the next step. And I think that a child sees that, knows it, and invests more of him or herself in it. And I think that shared experience, a little bit of hardship encourages the kids to do better. And I think that's why the construction phase of those projects resulted in a little bit of an improvement, because the students experienced a shared hardship. They believed that someone was doing something for them because they were investing this money, making this change. A lot of times, you hear someone say, a teacher could stand up at the microphone on the Board of Aldermen and say, it's for the children. A 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, 7-year-old, they're not dumb. They're going to hear that, and they're going to know that's not true, because it's not about the kids. Now, during that 1 year where the construction was going on, I think that the children began to believe it. And when they began to believe it, then there was an improvement. But it went right back down to where it was. And I think that's a tragedy for the city of Nashua, because a lot of money was spent, and the kids believed it for a year, and then it went right back to status quo, slightly up, slightly down, or flat. And I think that's really unfortunate. So it's nice that we're going to have new buildings, but I think we need to have better education. And you just spoke a moment ago about Elm Street. Elm Street's a nice building. I think that if we lose these landmarks, I mean, I've been in Nashua for 10 years. I've lived here. I've been around the place longer because of the airport and whatnot. But I know a lot of people have been in Nashua for a long time. A lot of people have been in Nashua all their lives. They say, it's not like what it used to be.
Yeah.
It's not like what it used to be. Well, I didn't grow up here, so I can't say, what it used to be like. But I do know that buildings that convey some sense of that history should not be lost. Because we want to carry over something.
Right.
When I was on the Board of Aldermen, we were talking about the mill-yard chimney. That big chimney down there. It's not a chimney anymore.
It's
but
a monument.
it is a monument, and I voted to keep that in place because actually it was then Alderman Donchis, now Mayor Donchis, who said, when we lose a symbol like that, it's gone forever. And he was supported keeping it, and I certainly did too. I think that there are certain aspects of the city of Nashua, monuments or buildings or whatnot, that really we don't want to lose because it ties us to history. And those folks who've been here longer than I have, I want them to still be able to say, well, it's not like what it was, but I remember going to Elm Street School and that's still there. That would be nice.
Right.
So I don't want to see Elm Street School lost. Now, it may not be a school all the time, but the building is a special building, I know, for a lot of folks here. And it's a beautiful building.
Yeah,
and the Keefe Auditorium's great.
I agree. I think I've been there for a lot of shows and stuff, and I think that would be a loss if we don't.
It would be a
that.
loss.
And I don't know what the new one's going to be like, but it's not the same.
The new Art Center?
Yeah.
It's not going to have the seating capacity, and it's not going to be available for the symphony to use, is my understanding.
Right.
And I think that that's problematic. Really, the symphony, if we look at the Nashua arts scene, the cornerstone of the Nashua arts scene is the symphony.
Right.
It's successful. People come. And they have had season after season.
Right.
That's the cornerstone. And really anything that we do for Nashua Arts should be built upon that. And I think it's very unfortunate that the new Arts Center can't accommodate the symphony. And it's doubly unfortunate if they're talking about tearing down the Keefe Auditorium. Where's that symphony going to go?
Right.
I don't know if they have any plans for that or what those discussions
I would hope
were.
that they keep that and actually see if they can make even some kind of with the rest of the building, a living place for some of these people who have no home. So we have a number of people. It's not as bad as it is in Manchester, and Manchester is not as bad as some of the cities around here. But I think that's you got something there. You can make it livable. You don't have to make it fancy, but you can make it livable, and people would have a time. Maybe, a temporary time while they had to put their life together and then go out on their own again.
I think that's a fine idea. I think that any idea should be discussed. I think tearing it down and putting something else there would be a loss for the city. Because just like we said several years ago, we were discussing that chimney. Once it's gone, it's gone. And I don't want to see it gone.
I'd like to put in another word for the Academy of Arts and Sciences. They are their kids are very excited. And if while they do use the computer to get most of their information, I found they appreciate it. I give all my old National Geographics to them so that they can see the world.
Sure.
And that really gets people interested in academics, I think.
I think that's great.
So, people, why don't you try to get into a tour down there and donate some of your books, your school books, your old college books or whatever. And at the same time, I'd like to also remind you, elections are going to be coming up in the fall for the Board of Education and for the aldermen.
Right.
And if you want to help, if you're interested, the Republican Party has its meetings on the second Wednesday of the month, and come to it and find out what's happening from the Republican side.
Sounds great.
Okay. Well,
I hope
thank
people
you,
listen
David.
and do it. You're welcome, Carl. Thank you for having me on. It's great to be here.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.